Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy with Full of Sit.
I'm Desi with Highway to Heal, and today we're going to talk about when can you start training your dog?
So that's a question I think we both get pretty regularly is when can I start training my dog? How old do they have to be? How young is too young? And we're going to explain it.
Yep, that's right. So the first thing that people need to understand is you're actually training your dog from day one, whether you realize it or not. So some examples of that would be not correcting bad behavior. So, right, you bring a new dog home.
Yep.
Starts chewing on stuff. If you don't address it, you basically explain to the dog that it's perfectly fine to chew on stuff.
Yep, absolutely. You bring a dog home and they're watching everything that you do. They're figuring out rules and boundaries and what they can and can't get away with. And, just because you don't think you're training the dog, really you are. The dog's learning. Okay, so pay attention to your dog.
Yep, because they're definitely paying attention to you and everything that you're doing. So what exactly is training? A lot of people, when they hear the word training, they kind of think they think it's mostly just like the formal stuff, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of, the obedience training and the sits and the downs and and leash pressure and stuff like that. But really, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. Basically, if you think about it as just teaching the dog yes and no, curbing bad behavior. So going back to you're training them all the time, whether you realize it or not. If you're letting them get up on the counters. Well, you can teach them that they can't get up on the counters, but that's not really a sit or a down. It doesn't look very formal, does it?
No, not really. It's just,
But the idea is you're teaching.
It's teaching the dog not to do something.
Yeah.
And that's what training is teaching the dog. Of course, we try to teach the dog to do things versus not doing things, but sometimes you get a dog that's already got some bad habits and you got to fix it.
Yep, now you got to take the wheel. Thank you, Reckless. So how old is too old, Jeremy? What if my dog's, I got a 7-year-old, he's too old.
Nah, that's not too old, unless he's like a geriatric 7-year-old. I mean, as long as the dog's physically able to do what it is we're wanting them to do, then
you can teach them.
Not too old.
Yeah, you can absolutely teach them. Question that I get a lot, especially lately, it kind of seems to be puppy season right now. So a lot of people are asking how young is too young to start training.
Like I can't start my 8-week-old puppy on training, right? That's like they're still a puppy.
Well, that's what people don't tend to understand. At 8 weeks, you're training. It just doesn't look like training. That's kind of where you're starting to lay the foundation for the bigger things that come down the road. So what would some foundation stuff look like with a puppy?
Yeah, so when I get a puppet, 8 weeks old, I'm doing some pretty basic stuff. I'm getting them following food, so I'm luring the dog around, and I'll lure them into some sits and some downs, and I'll teach them to turn left and turn right and stuff like that. But I'm not putting anything on command. I'm just trying to build muscle memory, really.
Yep, exactly. So it's kind of like preschool.
Yep.
It's prep work. So you're building a foundation for things to come. So if you don't, or you couldn't, because maybe you got your dog secondhand, if you don't or could not take them to preschool and do all this prep work, your training is going to look a lot different. And a lot of people miss the puppy stages altogether. So I think for the majority of our audience, they're dealing with really secondhand dogs.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of people with brand new puppies.
Yeah, most people don't. A lot of people are big into rescuing them. A lot more people are adopting dogs now versus going out and buying dogs from breeders. So, in the pet training world, we deal with a lot of kind of secondhand dogs.
Yep, and they usually do have some pretty bad behaviors, quirks, things that somebody just neglected to do early on, but that doesn't mean that you can't change it.
Yeah. So, with older dogs, Desi said that the training looks different, and it does. You can take a dog that's been worked with and trained from the time they were 6 weeks or 8 weeks old, and you can just tell they learn things a little bit differently than an older dog that, is maybe 3 or 4 years old and hasn't had any kind of training, has never been worked with.
Yep. And a lot of that just, if they kind of go back through some of the stages of maturity, it makes sense that as the dog gets older, they change.
Yep.
So the techniques should change too. I'm probably not going to lure a 10-year-old dog all over the place for a month and a half and get them on different circuits, unless they're afraid of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But for the most part, an older dog kind of already has that aspect figured out. So it looks different when you get to that age.
So I think the biggest difference really is, I think, the time spent doing kind of the basic stuff. So Desi said we don't spend as much time. If I start training a dog that's already 3 years old, I'm not going to do a whole lot of luring around and stuff like that. When I say a whole lot, I'm not. With a puppy that's 6 weeks old, it's not uncommon that I'm going to spend months luring the dog around and getting them to do stuff, and I'm doing things very motivationally. Okay, I'm not going to do that with an older dog. I'm sure I'm going to lure them around some, but hopefully it's not going to take months to get them.
They should figure it out
to do
pretty
stuff.
quick. They should be able to catch on really quick.
So I always tell clients, when somebody calls me and they have a 8-week-old puppy and they want to start training, I absolutely am all about training them as soon as you get them.
Definitely.
But the flip side of that is I always warn them also. I'll say, look, we're going to start training your dog, and it's not going to be super pretty and flashy right now. We're building a lot of muscle memory and putting the foundation down. It's not going to look like obedience in the beginning.
Yep.
So a lot of people expect to start with an 8-week-old puppy and, teach the dog of a formal sit and down.
Probably not going to get a 1-minute sit out of an 8-week-old puppy.
It's not going to happen that fast.
It's definitely not. So I guess the takeaway is, when do I start? Start now. Start the day you get the dog, and if you haven't, and you have the dog 6 months, we'll start today.
Yep. Like Desi said earlier, you're training the dog whether you realize it or not.
Yep.
So you may as well do it properly.
Yep.
Start the day you get the dog. If you didn't start the day you got the dog, then start today.
That's right. And if you've got an older dog that you got secondhand and nobody else did the work, it doesn't mean you can't start today also. Yep. Cool. So go out and train your dogs.
Yeah, train your dogs. Hopefully this helped answer a lot of people's, questions of when can I start training my dog and how old is too old and how young is too young.
Yep. Questions we get asked a lot. So there's your answer, guys.
Yep. All right. So that's a wrap. Let us know if there's anything else that you want us to address.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Feel free to share. Yep. Thanks, guys.
Hit the bell.
Yep, hit the bell.
All right.
Go train. Bye.
Adios.
Okay.